Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our very first author night. This has been a long time coming. A lot of these authors can relate to the pain and agony of a lot of paperwork we had to fill out. Some of them are working also the May 5th event. We were pleasantly surprised. We contacted the Central Texas Writers Society and also Words Unite, the Words Unite bookstore owner. And we said, hey, do y'all want to just come and do an author read? And y'all can sell your books. And we did not realize that there were that many local authors here. We were like, whoa. So we are so pleased to have all of our authors here. The way that we're going to work it is we're going to introduce each author. They're going to read for about 5 or 6 minutes or talk for about 5 or 6 minutes. You go ahead and jot your questions down on your paper. If you will, authors announce who you are first so they know who they're asking a question to. And then we'll take like a 5-minute break, 10-minute break. Then we'll get the next set of our authors to come and talk to you guys and read their work. And then after that, you guys can go and visit with them. So I have to start this way because my author, Alexia Bartholomew, has been here since what, 10 a.m.? She was extra ready. And so we're going to start this way. If you will, please welcome Alexia Bartholomew.
Blessings everybody, my name is Alexia Bartholomew, and you can remember Alexia, you call me Lex or Lexi. The type of books I have is mainly on encouragement, and my objective for the book is to encourage people. The first book, Father Give Me a Heart, is about encouraging people to do things from the heart, not half-heartedly, but from the whole, like with a whole heart. And it was subject with like humility, life as a believer, forgiveness, and also about how to be a blessing to others. Also, my second book, you're not the only one who has been hurt, violated, abused, has overcome. And it's just really a book to encourage people that they're not the only one who's been through some things. And I share stories I have been through that can stem from abuse, relationships with my parents, relationships with the wrong boys and the wrong men, and also with bullying. And my book, I encourage that not just for the believers. It's for anybody that's wanting to change heart and ready to change and to be encouraged that they're not the only ones who have been through some things. And that if I can make it through the things that I've been through, so can the reader. Thank you.
Go ahead, y'all just rather just waste time with that. Just go that way. And you go this way.
I'm Mike Matthews. Several people here who know who I am. I teach here, teach in creative writing, literature, composition, all of the above, other duties aside. I have 2 books out. One is Water of Joy. This is the first book that came out several years ago. It's about seeking serenity, but not really recognizing it when you find it, and then trying to grasp it the next day. So where did that go? What is that? The resolution is mischievously put in the second to the last poem, just to be me. So you have to, if you flip to the end, to see what happens. You're not going to get it. The second book is called Ashes. It actually occurred a year before this one. That's why this one's about seeking serenity. It was inspired by the taking ashes to the coast and releasing them from my father, and the numbness, the kind of searching for meaning in that kind of gray area that comes after the grief of loss. And so I'll read from this one, see how much time it takes. So this poem is called Start With Nothing. Start with nothing. Turn on the lamp. Cluttered paper. One tarnished earring. Wet socks, thick black leaves outside. The cold. Start in the present, under a lamp. Nothing that arrives from nowhere. With the present that is memory from the future. A broken toy rubber robot with a toy arm. Torn arm, empty candy wrapper, untied paper clips. Resurrect some memory, my orange bike, with a banana seat to see my father. I stopped at a water fountain, the only decision I could make for myself, to drink. The bike burned orange, flame orange. Start with the lamp under an empty midnight. Dig into a dream from nowhere, 2 days late. Not the dream practiced during the drive to work, the breaks between words about lost moments, without touching, without a touch. Start in a dream where a desk has little room for elbows. Let chores rain from the lamp's bowl, and pool in intuitive falling, a lake bill, midnight, wrapped around a black tree stump. Start with crumpled receipts, worn out clothes, stained glass of empty wine under lamplight, tangled with orange memories. End with some middle between the lamp and the desk. Start from nothing and end stacked against the wake of days. This one's called I Keep Looking. I'm looking for something, so I know I won't find it. I've listened by looking at the dragonflies, at the dust blown into my eyes, and down my throat, by every coming storm, at the bricks broken everywhere to replace old shops with new towers, at the families riding one electric scooter, at the tired, concentrating bus drivers, at the eyes that stare at me, a foreigner, the Lawan, at the monks with stern faces after they chant, who spot me, listening cross-legged on the step of the old temple, at the trash and the dog crap on the brick sidewalks, at the resigned face of the dying man, whose eyes long deeply to leave, the long hours in his last bed when nothing happens and no one visits. I listen, look, and I still hide when I seek. Thank you. This one's called Our Lives in Boxes. Somebody did a parallel sculpture with this poem. That's how much I have left?
Yeah.
How much do I have left? 3?
That's
Okay.
it, Mike.
That was 6 minutes?
That was 6 minutes.
Wow, that was
Thank
fast.
you.
We should do like
You were getting into it, Mike.
6 minutes.
Hello, everybody. I'm
Okay,
Susan Mitchell, and I'm a storyteller. I love telling stories and reading stories, especially to children. I like to watch their faces when I read to them, and especially when something unexpected or funny happens, I like to watch their reactions. But I started writing stories with my 5-year-old grandson, when we would go to the ranch and with our blue healer, and my husband and I would take him to the ranch and we'd go on adventures and we'd throw the ball in the water and do different things, and then we'd write a little story about it. And so he loved those stories and he'd take them home with him. So then we started making imaginary stories about things that could happen that were exciting, and we would even have time travel. We'd go back to when the Comanches used to live there, and we made peace with them, and we started doing all that, and then we just started writing stories together, and we would even draw pictures, but we had fun with that. And so since we liked going back in time so much, then I also wrote stories about, some frontier adventures called Hannah's Hero. So the Ghost-Faced Dog series is all about my grandchildren and my dogs, and then we did the Hannah's Heroes, and then also I wrote stories about the dance team detectives, about just some girls that are on the dance team that were solving mysteries. It's kind of like Nancy Drew type stories, and most of them are for YA or for children, but we just enjoy writing the stories together, and all my grandchildren are famous now, and my dogs. I just self-publish, so I'm not famous, but they think they're famous. So anyway, I'm going to read an excerpt real quick. There's the first 5 books, I have 3 stories in each book. So I put all of them into one book called The Diary of Gus, the Ghost-Faced Dog. And this is the Flash Flood, which is one of the favorites of everybody that I read to. That's great news, Grandma said, but there is a flash flood and tornado warning out for our area, so y'all need to get back home as soon as possible. The boys looked out from under their safe overhang, but couldn't see anything through the driving rain. We can't go out in this, or we will probably slide down into the creek. I think we better stay here until the storm is over, Cal said to Grandma over the walkie-talkie. Okay, you can stay there, Grandma agreed. Grandpa and Uncle Jake will try to get there and help you get out. The water has never come up as high as the overhang before, but if it does, you could be washed down the creek. For the first time, the boys began to worry. We didn't think of that, Cal said. We thought we were safe here. You probably are, Grandma agreed. I just want you to watch the rising water and keep us posted. The boy's Uncle Jake was home from college. He was a senior at Texas A&M University, and he played center for the Aggie football team. He and Grandpa got some rope and raincoats and jumped in their 4-wheel drive truck. They started for the overhang on the cliff. However, they soon found that the water was too high to cross at the concrete slab over the branch of the creek. Then they tried to call the fire department for help, but their cell phones were not giving a signal. The phone at the house was out of water too. Meanwhile, the water was rising dangerously closer to the overhang. Ethan had a radio in his backpack, so he got it out and turned it to the local station to hear news about the storm. As he listened, a special announcement came over the air advising how dangerous the storm was. In fact, a car had just been swept off the low water crossing on the county road going over Lucy Creek. A man and woman had been rescued further down the creek. They had taken off their seatbelts and were trying to get their 4-year-old daughter out of the car when a huge wall of water hit the car. The parents were washed through the windows, and the whereabouts of the car and the little girl were unknown. Ethan and Cal did not know at the time that the little girl was her cousin Skylar, who was going with her parents, Jet and Sarah, to visit Uncle Jake at the ranch. And I have a picture of the car floating down the creek. That must have happened just up the creek from us, Ethan explained. Maybe the car is coming this way. And you're going to have to read the book.
Greetings, everyone. All right, so I just want to thank you all for, actually I want to thank you for organizing this and CTC for inviting us here for this opportunity. My name is Elizabeth James. I am an author, I am a coach, and I'm also an occupational therapist. And the way I write, I know everyone has a different style. The way I write incorporates the things that, that matter to me. My profession is actually my passion. And so my journey for writing started for me in 2015, and it actually started from a really low point. In 2015 is when my mom passed away of stomach cancer, and I went through a divorce after 17 years. Also found myself having to just restart everything. And so instead of being in this depressed state, it was important for me to honor my mom's legacy by writing. And so my first book that I wrote is Overcoming Loss. And that is how I started to heal. And I have since written 8 books. The one that I'm actually here to share today is Single, Successful, and Satisfied. Thriving in singleness at any age. You know, sometimes when we get to a certain point, we find ourselves wanting to hurry out of that season. Well, I've learned how to embrace the current season that I am in, and so what I wanted to do is help others find the same strength, courage, boldness that I've found in this season also. And so what I wanted to do is read one of my excerpts from this book. This book is divided into 3 chapters. It talks about embracing singleness, and then it talks about embracing being successful, and then it talks about embracing satisfaction. And so I wanted to read the section that talks about being successful. In chapter 9, it talks about how to level up your life. It says, you possess high value. Life has a way of bringing obstacles and setbacks in life, both personally and professionally. Sometimes you find yourself questioning decisions you made in the past. This is something that everyone deals with. Some of those decisions have impacted your health, your well-being, your family, your profession, your business. Many people struggle with rising above the obstacles, setbacks, and the challenges that have led to daily mental and emotional struggles with anxiety, depression, feelings of anger or resentment due to these unexpected life changes in relationships, in jobs, or even financial stability. So despite all of the obstacles and setbacks, the one big question that remains is, how do you still manifest a successful mindset? It's not an easy question, and I'd like to share 12 steps that can help you manifest professional success and contentment in your life. So real quick, I'm just going to kind of go over those steps. The first thing you have to do is redefine your meaning of failure. A lot of people consider failure to be the end, but when you think of failure as being a life lesson, what you can learn from, it totally changes how you perceive that and what your next step is. Change your perspective and attitude. Sometimes we can get so stuck and so down on where we're at that we forget that attitude is everything. If we exhibit a positive attitude, then we bring and manifest more positivity into our life. Set realistic financial, personal, and business goals. Sometimes we set our goals too high and we have no choice but to fall. It's really important to be realistic of where you are and take baby steps to be able to move forward. Number 4, develop and create your personal definition of success. What might be successful to you may mean different from me. You may value success in your family. You may value success in your finances. It's okay to value and to define that based on who you are and not what others say that should look like. Develop and create. Reward yourself for progress along the way. So many times we don't pay attention to the small progress that we make, and we give up too soon. Decide to live outside your comfort zone. Have you ever thought about writing? Have you ever thought about traveling? Have you ever thought about trying a new hobby? Do it. Life is too short not to. Find and connect to mentors who can support your advancement. You're not alone. If you look and you don't have immediate family to support you, look for a mentor that can support you along your way. Create a rock star morning routine. Very important. How you start your day determines how you're going to end that day. Whether you have enough energy to get going, whether you have the right mindset, create a routine that really supports what you want, that incorporates feeding your spiritual, your emotional, and your physical well-being. Release limiting beliefs and recognize your self-defeating thoughts that are present. A lot of times we are the ones who hold ourselves back. We like to blame others, but a lot of times it starts with us. Recognize that. Number 10, let go of the past and embrace the new you. There's nothing behind you that's going to allow you to move forward. Focus on where you're going and what you need to accomplish that. Number 11, focus on improving your organizational skills for your business or your personal life. If you live in clutter, it's hard to function in clutter. And the last one, implement a time management system. Time is our most valuable asset. If you waste it, you can never get it back. Thank you.
You're up.
Can you hear me in the back?
Yes.
I don't like to stand behind the podium, don't like to stand in something, a barrier in front of.
We can give
the
you
audience.
the microphone. You can
That's
pull it
okay.
off.
I think I'm good like this.
Okay.
I'm Charles Darnell. I'm from San Antonio. And this book has not been released yet. It'll be released in May. I have some advanced reader copies of the best, so see me afterwards. These poems are primarily persona poems, and they are based on biblical characters and stories. And let me hasten to add that these are not what are called praise poems. I'd like to give you an example. The poem I have here is The Magi, and it's based on works by Matthew, chapter 2. Ah, my friend, come, sit. It has been a long while. No, it is just me now. Melchior left us soon after, worn out by the journey. Balthazar gone just this year. Yes, we kept in touch. Who wouldn't? Yet it has been many years since we last heard anything about that boy in the barn. Maybe Herod found him after all, despite our precautions. We were so sure, the star guiding us straight to him, the assured acceptance of kingly gifts, all seemed correct and inevitable. But we returned with a sense of uncertainty, uncomfortable with the shifting of our time. Does the boy yet live? He is near a man now, if he does. Maybe a carpenter like his father, maybe a fisherman. Will he be king? Stranger things happen, I know. Though this child troubled me, I see him still lying in the feed trough. Surely a king would be born in more comfortable surroundings. They called us wise, but I cannot see through this. My conflicted mind asks, could we have been wrong? Were we old fools already? I suppose I shall not know. My time is coming to its end. I'm too old for another journey. And no word. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nicole Ness, and Charles Darnell and several other people in this room are all part of Central Texas Writers Society. I am a nature poet myself. I'm going to read a little bit of my work, but I hope you stop by our table and check our books out. We publish only once a year, and it opens up in June. All right, first poem, Still a Heartbeat. when it is cold outside, and I think of birds, how they fluff their feathers, the only armor against the bitter slashes of wind. There is a darkness in this white, and a strange silence that moves the snow in ripples, shapes those icicles sharp, slanting left. It is easy to understand how the white blanket can be mistaken for a place of rest, the steady, slowing heartbeat, a comfort. Most of my poetry comes from experience, including that one. I found a dead bird in the snow, and slanted icicles, and things like that. This next poem is called Ramble. A dragonfly falsely lands, testing the waters. Roots of trees grip the cut bank, dangling clumps of dry debris gathered from a rising. Sounds of mechanical bearings and ancient Native American chant, hi-ya, hi-ya, flow beyond the shallow bank. An aromatic steam of warm plants mingles with the damp, shifting earth. Filamentous algae hold like human hair on the submerged limestone. A thumb-sized toad, the color of clay, leaps by a child's lonely sneaker. I watch the ants and wonder if the toad will eat the ants, or the ants will eat the toad. Another insect rattles a rumba as a trumpet whistle travels in stereo through the trees. Mounds of dried sludge, the pattern of barnacles, hold cliff swallows by the dozens as they madly swirl in and out of the holes beneath the overpass. As a burnished black wasp bounces its gaster and temple, near a broken lure with green neon strands. I hear bizarre chirping like machine or a saw. It erupts across the towering field of grass. The Texas sky beats blue with soft cumulus clouds, barreled in undertones of gunmetal. The meandering current slithers and shines its iridescent scales. A civilization moves, a gypsy bumblebee in dissipation.
Rennie, you're on. Hey, you're on. Hold the button, hit the button. Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rennie Alter. I'm an author, a poet, a storyteller, a health nut. I volunteer for nonprofits in my community. My hobbies include reading, writing, blogging, creating books, photography, researching, continuous education on a variety of topics, networking, songwriting, and music. I'm going to read two different things, one from On the Mood, Autobiography of a Survivor, and the other one from My Quest for Healing. I'm still here. I am a survivor. However, I didn't realize it during years of experiencing one situation after another with adrenaline rushes that wreaked havoc on my health. Resilience wasn't in my constitution or my vocabulary. I've endured and survived childhood abuse, trauma, chronic stress, depression, way too many dysfunctional relationships, date rape, abuse, rape from partners, abortion, walking away from all my possessions, being a single parent, abandonment, car accidents, chronic pain, Epstein-Barr viruses, chronic fatigue, adrenal fatigue, losing my job, getting on disability, becoming wheelchair dependent, shame, self-loathing, homelessness, unfriendly roommates, slumlords, prescription drug withdrawal, disassociation, and moving 43 times. If life is an education, I've obtained a whopper of one. I wandered through life searching relentlessly for meaning and love in all the wrong places through the distorted lens of my false beliefs and programming. I was also a scaredy cat, so I often up and moved when a situation became uncomfortable. Meanwhile, in between all the above chaos, life was good. I lived in some very nice places, had mostly great jobs, got to do some traveling, and met a lot of interesting people. At one point, I realized I was getting help from the spiritual realm whenever things got too intense. Just like a parent must allow their children to become independent, solve their own problems, and manage their own lives, it seemed my spiritual helpers were doing the same for me. They didn't interfere unless they felt it was necessary, or I cried out for help. Perhaps, had I had a different type of career, like think of journalism in third world countries and other dangerous places, all my experiences would have been part of the job. Ultimately, I wanted to do more than just exist like I saw so many other people doing. I wrote poetry, songs, letters, journals, short stories, blog posts, and books. I also kept logs of every job I had, place I lived, man I dated, car I owned, and educational course I took. Meanwhile, I had majored in business in high school and acquired typing, bookkeeping, and secretarial skills. Thus, despite all the chaos, I could always find and keep a job. I was dependable and really stayed home when I didn't feel well, or the stress of a living situation overwhelmed me. When I had to move to an area that had temp agencies, I would get temp assignments, which inevitably became full-time permanent positions. Even though I didn't go on to college after high school, I often took a class at a local community college, eventually accumulating enough credits to transfer to University of Phoenix and obtain a bachelor's degree. If a company I worked for offered continuing education, I took advantage of that too. While this book is filled with my stories from the past, for the most part, I choose to let them live in my books while I create new, improved stories for my life. One day, you will tell your story of how you've overcome what you're going through now, and it will become part of somebody else's survival guide.
Wow.
When I landed here in Texas, November 2006, I had no idea it was the land of transformation where I would be assigned a new quest, put alone on a boat to be the captain of my own ship, and facing storms in a rough sea. I would also be docking on strange and unfamiliar land with rough terrain. Ever since I had the supernatural experience in 2010, I've been on a quest to find out what happened and how to get back the amazing energy I had. The energy included the courage to pursue the path of doing big things that would contribute to improving world circumstances. I also wanted to know why I burned out and crashed. While I was in the midst of the manic adrenaline high, I was able to walk again after being wheelchair dependent for 5 years. And unless I was experiencing an anxiety attack, I continued to do so until July 2018. Seasons came and went, chilly winters, luscious springs, sizzling summers, and the overnight arrival of fall. I read, I wrote, I watched, I listened, I paid attention. Somewhere along the path of stepping stones, I learned from Bruce Lipton that we have an estimated 50+ trillion cells in our bodies. I realized I don't just make choices for me, I make choices for we, all 50+ trillion of us. I don't just need to practice self-love and acceptance for me, I must practice for us. I became aware of how my mind and emotions affect the trillions of cells that make up my body. I wasn't the only one feeling abandoned. All trillions of my cells did too. I know I had to shift out of low self-worth and victim consciousness because my thoughts and beliefs were affecting the universe I call my body. And I was in awe of the connections I noticed and how the spiritual realm was orchestrating my growth.
Oh, one more. We saved the best for last.
But no pressure, right?
No pressure.
Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Billings. I'm also from the San Antonio area, Schertz, Texas. I'm a poet, and I self-publish my own poetry books. I'm going to read a couple from my newest one, Sugar Cookies, and then I'm going to read you one of my infamous rambles. Okay.
If you want.
First one's called Rainwater Pothole. Some see an obstacle to avoid, a hazard to drive around, a nuisance on their way to wherever they're going. Others see a hole filled with water, a leftover from the recent storms, a minor inconvenience to have to deal with or not. And others simply pass it by without giving it a second thought. But the walker with the camera, he sees a small pond surrounded by a gray gravel beach, the nearby trees reflected on the smooth surface of the water. This one's called Christmas Eve Morning at Whataburger. He ordered his food, then walked past the stairs, ignored the disapproving looks because he was used to them. He put his hands in his coat pockets, then leaned against the wall to wait for his breakfast to go. When she tentatively approached him and asked so very kindly if he needed anything to put on his feet. He smiled, then thanked her, but declined her offer, explaining that he was okay, he just never wore shoes. She smiled with a little frown, then hesitantly walked away, but he saw it beneath the concerned brow in her eyes. There was compassion, not judgment. There was concern, not disgust. There was the spirit of Christmas where others had none. And he took no offense at her assumption, but instead he felt a warmth grow in his chest because he knew deep in his heart that through people like her, angels are here among us, giving us hope when hope is truly needed in these times. Okay, this is called I've Forgotten How to Speak 9. When my kids were kids, I was fluent in mouthful and half asleep, tired and I don't need a nap, cartoons and silly jokes. I was proficient in owie and tickle giggle, stuffy nose and burpy noise, hissy fit and hugs because, but now with the kid of my kid, I've forgotten how to speak 9. Or rather, she speaks a 9 I'm not familiar with, a 9 too advanced for me, a 9 influenced by words we didn't have at 9. When did encyclopedia become Google or books become YouTube or TikTok? I can still talk to her and can I help and snuggles, but I fear that by the time I master the new 9, she'll be moving up to today's 10. Okay, this one's called Rain Ramble. It rained, there was nothing to stop it, and so it rained and there was nothing to do about it but get wet or go inside, which I couldn't do because I had things to do in regards to the grind. And so it rained and so I got wet, standing in line next to a man named Benny who agreed it was a shame all this rain with so much to do outside. What's to be done, said I. Not much can be done, said he, so we ducked our heads against the wet and nodded, yep. Rain's good in the grand scheme of things. It makes things grow, clears the air, washes the streets and alleyways with the daily grime and the daily grind. And it's a nice way to spend the day watching the rain through a window from the comfort of the easy chair, a hot cup of coffee or steaming cup of tea, sitting on the table beside you. Rain is fun for barefoot boys and girls playing in wet streets, splashing in the wet puddles. Who cares if my pants are soaked up to my knees, wetter than even the rest of me? That's kind of the point, isn't it? Rain is good for farmers and gardeners, for it makes things grow, money in the bank, or at least food on the table. Rain is good for a good night's sleep, but not for life on the street, because cardboard can only soak up so much of the wet. Rain splashes on doorways and alleyways, windowsills and flower pots, riddling little puddles, filling vast oceans, rinsing off dirty cars, and dirtying up clean ones. Rain can fall as a spring shower, or a Texas gully washer, or a simple lullaby, or trumpets blaring, drums are beating, cymbals are clashing, big bands surrounding cacophony. There's purple rain and acid rain and pets raining from the sky. Rain, rain, go away and rain. Sweet Jesus, let it rain, rain. It's raining again, but it always rains in California. Boy, don't they warn you? And so it rained, and Betty complained because his shoes were wet and he still had things to do. And I nodded my head because I could relate. Well, except for the shoes.
Alrighty, well this has been a great first part. What we're going to do now is we're going to ask the rest of our authors who are here to switch places with the authors we have here. If you need to take a 5-minute rest, if you've not filled out the the door prize or whatever, go do that really quick, and then the rest of my authors, come on up. Is CJ here or Nicole? Did they ever get here? Ashley, did CJ or Nicole ever get here? CJ, you are here. This is Taylor. CJ, where's Mama?
I was here to check on the turtle. Did you see her video? Well, it's better, but they turtle. It's good to see you all. My dog.
authors. If you will, everyone mosey on back to the chairs. We're going to go through our second. We're looking for Antoine, who just walked in the door. This is the next time. So Antoine. All righty, we'll get started. Antoine. We are very proud of one of our authors. He was in our Writers Guild here at Central Texas College, and he has how many books published? But you're getting ready to publish 4. And we didn't think we had a spot open for him for tonight. So Antoine, will you please take your seat at the table? Come on. We are very proud of him. Now he's got a smile on his face. I was giving him a hard time and he's giving me a hard time. So this is impromptu and you're just going to have to do it. You're going to wing it? Come on, guys. Let's let Antoine go first. Come on.
All right.
You can pull it off.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Antoine Lewis. I'm originally from Alabama, prior service military, currently in college, a minister, so I'm doing a lot of things, kind of busy. This is very impromptu, just came back in. So what led me to CTC is I was back on my pursuit for a business degree. And what got me into, with Cindy, I had an extra credit assignment. And so on this extra credit assignment, I joined the Writers Guild, and I already had a gift and a calling on my life from the Lord to write. But this helped open the door for me to begin writing, where I published poetry, and it started from there. So I wrote my first book called The Accepted Life. It's a personal journey, because throughout ministry I have seen many people mess up scripture, and they don't give people the hope that they need to understand, help to understand like their true faith, because you have crossed over into the kingdom, but you don't live like you're in the kingdom. So this book is designed to help people understand that close personal relationship with God without a shadow of a doubt, like to eliminate all the arguments and the falsehood that's been taught in ministries. It's going to open your eyes to just have a closer relationship with God. So I'll read just a small bit. Thank you, Sandy.
You're welcome.
And it's filled with scripture to back up all the statements that I make in the book. So, all right, the first chapter I will read is called The Controversy. And it's opening up our understanding to let us know what the whole message of the gospel is really about. And so it starts by saying, there have been certain statements made within our faith about salvation, which some claim that it's possible that one can lose their salvation after they have been saved, sealed, and some believe that once you have been saved by Jesus, you are redeemed for all eternity. So there are two opposing viewpoints. And these are the two opposing viewpoints that conflict with the promises of God in which he gave us through his son Jesus. So which side are you on? In this chapter, I am going to attempt to persuade you through the scriptures that explain salvation and by how we are saved, which will generate a better acceptance within yourself concerning the gifts of God, so that you will not have fear of the Lord in an improper manner. Some of these teachings are geared towards calling the sheep to fear, so that they will not leave the local assembly. So it's basically stating that certain people teach principles that will cause people to want to stay in their house and not leave and go out and expand their relationship with God. All right. Those that I have seen walk after this manner believe that they can lose their salvation, walk so carefully addressing sin issues in which sin is their constant focus, and they never seem to enjoy the grace that God has given them So basically, you see people hopeless, in despair, in depression, and never fully coming to that understanding of true freedom and liberty that God has given them. So let's talk about tonight.
Ashley, you want to just, CJ's gonna do it? Hey, Ashley, will you give him the mic down lower? Thank you. That's Royster.
Hello, my name is Chase Josiah Brown, or you can call me CJ. I wrote this book, Henry versus Dave. So I'll go and read some of it. So, Dave is a person that bullies. Dave starts to bully him. Tim and Comet, Henry's friends, come up with a plan to take care of Henry. Will their solution be able to solve the problem? Dave walks into the classroom and sits down in his chair. The bell rings and the class stands up. Dave is bullying a boy named Henry, and Dave calls him a fat pig. Henry is very sad. Henry's two friends, Tim and Comet, yell, "Stop." No, you do not tell me what to do. Dave starts to walk away. He screams, "Bye," as he walks. Henry runs to his two friends. "Thank you, Tim and Comet," he exclaims. Tim and Comet tell Henry, "You're welcome." Henry starts to think to himself, "Will Dave ever stop bullying me?" Okay, I'm just going to skip a few pages. So I'm going to skip to the part where, like, his friends come up with the plan. Okay, Tim and Comet sees Henry is upset. They come up with the idea to protect Henry, and they say, "We will shield you." And then
Ashley Marie, aka Ashley Free. I am also the owner of Words Unite Bookstore, and CJ is one of my young authors, and so I love to have them come out here and to introduce themselves. So thank y'all for listening to him. Like you said, he wrote that when you were what? When he was 7, and you're what now? 9. And so I just like to watch them evolve. So definitely go and get CJ's books. But right now, I currently own a traveling bookstore called Words Unite Bookstore that showcases independent authors and their books. And why I like the authorship journey is because I started it for a healing path for me. And so the book that I'm going to introduce today is Ashley Free, which was my first book. Really recovering and retracing some of the different traumas and life experiences that I had. Hey guys! And but as I was doing this as an individual author, I met so many other authors who had the same conversation. How do we get our books out there? How do we move our books in a larger magnitude? How do we make introductions? How do we get in front of people? How do we speak? How do we start writing? And so I pretty much built a hub that pretty much has a one-stop shop to help you do all of that. So thank y'all for coming tonight. And so I'm going to discuss just a little bit of my book, Ashley Free. And I published 9 books. My grandma writes, I write, and my 2 daughters have also published books as well. And Ashley Free is my path of never allowing your past to define you. My book is dedicated to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and I tell him, thank you for taking your time with little old me. That's for the short people out there. And he knows, God knows that's my little joke. Like, this little person here, you put a lot of work in. And so I'm going to talk about phase 1 where I got to the root of it. And in the book, it's the history. And so, bang, bang, my mom comes in the room with the most terrifying look on her face, blood flowing from her face. She had to run in our room to escape. He continued banging and beating, and we were all awake now. All I could hear was screaming. All I could remember doing was praying for him to go away. I wanted to erase that day, but it would never fade because as my life evolved, I would continuously return to this dark night. It was during this time that I vowed to never suffer this same fate, but I did. And we are silenced by humility, or we're silenced by shame, and we're silenced by our past and not really tracing it and recovering those different feelings and those different experiences. And so I talk in this book a lot about retracing that history, but not allowing it to be the definition to what your future looks like. Through the rest of the book, I make you do the work. And I wrote things down like I will, I am, I can, I dream of, and then I did 365 days of positive words. I could only give yourself the positive reflection of what you see in the mirror. And so I definitely advise this to be a great healing book or a great conversation, especially if you have people who are dealing with things that they're carrying for a very long time. And the rest of my books are all about positive speaking, positive living, positive mindsets, because life is going to hit you with every punch that it can. But you can't let that defeat you. And so that's what it's all about. And thank y'all for listening.
You're up. You.
Hi there, everybody. My name is Royster, and I had all kinds of different plans, but you know how plans are. It's like somebody gets to laugh when you make plans. So anyway, I've got a few here that have a connection to Texas, so I'm going to stick with those, and then we'll see how it goes. I've got my thing. That was good. She said that because I good. Okay. There. This one was published in Iron Horse Literary Review out of Lubbock, out of that college you have up in Lubbock. What's that? Texas Tech. So it's entitled Model Building. This is essentially a poem to my 13-year-old self. Model building. A frame nearly finished. You trim bulkheads, scrape seams till the model appears whole, a single extrusion down to the last portal and hydraulic arm. Hours of handiwork concealed inside the polyethylene hull, pilot's deck, navigator's hatch, gaping bays boast chocks of drab incendiaries small as beans. Bristling from the replica, a plexiglass ball turret in cages, a crouching airman, another gun pod slung from the belly, a clear tumor, artillery in the tail, cannons on either flank, behind the cockpit, an armed, rotating skull cap. In the fine hours, you blacken a pushpin over a candle flame, and with the burnt carbon point, darken and deepen the mouth of each gun barrel. And what of the 1-inch crew? A cadre in camouflage, the runway personnel flash brown irises and pupils the size of lice. You soften the pilot's grip with boiling water, poise his arms upon the yoke, punch the bombardier near the crosshairs of his sight. With dull silver dope on a pencil tip, you paint cartridges on the waist gunner's belt, articulate buckles on his tiny chute straps. In his chest, you imagine a heartbeat of vapor. And this is spring training. Spring training. Baseball season upon us. It's easy to believe the season's really booming when you discover in the frozen food section a cardboard kiosk filled with wiffle ball sets. Yellow plastic Louisville sluggers shrink-wrapped with not one but 2 complimentary wiffle balls. Who cares if the target market's ensnared at an odd moment, the proverbial hand outstretched, not for the children's toy, but, you know, fresh like broccoli spears, Swanson beef pot pies with 10% more meat. Something happens the moment you spy the red banner, the cartoon faces grinning beneath the orange sun, drawn seemingly by a kindergartner. You stare at your cart and feel guilty for the loser you've become. You crave snow cones and licorice whips, though your hands broke the cold trappings of middle age, veggies and pleated baggies. Summers past leap to mind, with music humming you back to adolescence. That ballpark in dusty glory swells inside your head. You know what you want. Wrigley Field in aisle 5. Harry Carey singing from the foggy beyond, and Nolan Ryan's pitching lingers the Ravens. Let's close with this. The art of eating cheese, because we have not 1 but 2 deans in the audience. The art of eating cheese. Start the night before. In a mirror, admire yourself, poised with your favorite pen. Try to appear both humane and studious, graceful, carefree. Try on several faces beforehand. For off-color anecdotes, be sure to practice the astonished gasp, fingers clutching your chin, the well-informed nod. Don't forget, amused simpatico, a comic's gesture, one eyebrow raised, a mawkish grin. Be prepared to laugh on call. Make references to books you've never read. Arriving, try not to reek of gin. Good hooch is wasted on sober company. Take stock of the caterer's table. Melon balls, butter crackers, plaster forks, 30 minutes and you're gone. Brie and crusty bread, shrimp cocktail and aperitif served in crystal, spell afternoon, making cerebral boogie. Napkin on knee, snack plate on napkin, equal cut portions of melon and meat. If, while nibbling that wafer of cheese, you note an obscene splotch of mustard on the dean's lapel, fill your glass. For heaven's sake, loosen your tie.
And they have to follow an entertaining.
I'm still know the phone's for.
All right. My name's John Clark, and journalism is my background. I worked for the Temple Daily Telegram for a long time, and then for some reason I became a school teacher and barely survived 18 years of that. And so now I'm semi-retired, freelance writing, and I think I've written 19 books. And the one I'm going to talk about tonight was this one. This is my second book that was published. About half of them were published by a small publisher and half of them are self-published. And this one, Camino, Laughter and Tears Along Spain's 500-mile Camino De Santiago, was by my visit, two of my visits to the Camino. And what it is an ancient pilgrimage. It started in like the 9th century after the remains of St. James the Apostle were discovered in Spain. Apparently, that's the legend. That's what they thought they found. So they take these remains and build a tomb, which there's now a huge cathedral over there that's been around since the 12th century or something. And the idea was the people would travel from wherever they were to visit the tomb and be atoned of their sins. Now it's not so much a religious journey, it's kind of an adventure thing now. You start over here, and you take a backpack with just very few possessions in it, because the idea is you're going to be walking all day for like 30 days. So you take one change of clothes, and at the end of the day, you wash your clothes that you had on, you put on the clean clothes, and you just do that over and over all the time. So this was about my adventure to the Camino. I'm just going to read the introduction. It was probably the most frightening thing I've ever done, going to Spain. I remember being basically held captive for hours in a bedroom at my in-laws' house, nervously chain-smoking a box of Marlboros prior to getting married when I was 19 years old. Had a large semi-automatic pistol pointed in my face once when I stumbled into a late-night pizza restaurant robbery. Watching my oldest daughter being born was exciting but scary as hell, especially when one of the big nurses yelled at me for getting in the way. Riding a 1,500-pound rodeo bull was pretty scary the first time, and it hurt. Getting up in front of a college class to give a speech is nerve-wracking. Woke up one time in a Harris County jail cell in downtown Houston and had no idea where I was. Standing in the front of an empty junior high school classroom in my first year as a teacher, imagining a couple dozen teenagers staring back at me the first day of school was absolutely terrifying. But the idea of traveling overseas, being 5,000 miles or so away from home, was possibly the scariest time of all. For most people, I imagine, going to Europe is a tremendously exciting thing. Not a lot of people get that opportunity, at least not where I come from. I spent the first 31 years of my life in Houston, Texas, never living more than 20 miles away from the little 1,100 square foot house where I grew up in the Langwood subdivision, near the Cypress Fairbanks area, across the railroad tracks and the old Hempstead Highway from Spring Branch. When I was a kid, my family never went anywhere, and I never really imagined a world outside my hometown. Even after I graduated from college in 1987 and got a job offer with a newspaper 150 miles away in Temple, I didn't want to go. Temple? Where the hell is Temple? Until one of my professors at the University of Houston convinced me it would be a good career move. So the whole idea of going to Spain was extremely exciting and also scared me half to death. Even after I bought the plane ticket, which I hesitated many times before I actually hit the button on the computer. I tried several times to talk myself out of going. On the way to the airport, I even had to give myself little pep talks. Come on, man, it's not like you're going to prison or something. For one thing, I'd only been on an airplane 2 or 3 times and never for more than 3 hours. Didn't particularly enjoy it either. 3 hours seemed like forever. I remember walking through the New Orleans airport after my first flight on my 25th birthday, deaf as a post from clogged up ears. For another thing, I'd always been a major homebody. I'd driven cross country a couple of times, gone to the Canadian side of Niagara Falls and a couple Mexican border towns, but to Europe by myself? Anytime I traveled any distance from home, by the time I got where I was going, I was ready to turn around and go back. I could literally get homesick going to Dallas for the weekend. So even though I fantasized for a long time about going to Europe someday, actually doing it was never really a consideration. Little more than some kind of very far-off dream, pure fantasy. Along with being a non-traveler, I never had the money for such a thing. Who did? Nobody I knew. Vacation was driving to South Padre Island for a couple of days, or maybe a trip to San Antonio. Then I reconnected one day via the internet with an old friend from high school who has lived and traveled all over the world. Conversations with her, combined with a growing midlife crisis, one of several that I've had, rekindled my European adventure fantasy. At least I didn't buy a Corvette. And found myself increasingly drawn to it. People talked about the spirituality of the place, the beauty, the self-discovery, the life-changing experience. So off I went. And like always, it wasn't long after I got there that I wanted to turn around and come back home. I wanted to come back home in a big way. I even used the laptop computer in the hotel lobby in Pamplona shortly after I arrived to see how much it would cost me to buy a plane ticket and get out of there. Fortunately, the price was outrageous. Unbeknownst to me, I wasn't a seasoned traveler. I probably could have just called and changed my initial reservation and come on back home for a comparatively nominal fee, but I didn't know about such things back then. So I stayed, and I walked 500 plus miles across the country, and it was magical, absolutely magical. The first 3 or 4 days were terrifying, but after I settled down and realized I wasn't going to die or something, it became one of the greatest months of my life. I didn't take a telephone with me, which amazed some people, but I made use of various coin-operated computers all along the way for email communications back home, and also to chronicle everything in a blog. That blog is the basis of this book, along with additional commentary I added later. I met wonderful people along the way from countries all over the world. We walked and talked and laughed and sang and suffered together. I never felt more alive than during those days on the Camino. I hope you enjoy reading about it half as much as I enjoy telling about it.
Happy Thursday, everyone. Happy Thursday. My name is Miriam Misoagogo Manifest. Okay, so for those of you who are thinking about whether to use a pen name or to use your regular name, being that I have used both, it's just best to go with your regular name because it gets confusing once it's tied into your business. So that's why I had to merge both of them. But I am the author and owner of Honey in the Woods Reading and Coloring Book. This was my first children's book. The way it started, I was in college in Florida, Jacksonville, Florida, and I joined a creative writing club. So I wasn't getting any credits for this club. I wasn't getting paid to go to this club. I just went because I was really diving more into my writing. Well, they challenged us to write something different than what we normally write because I write for adults. So I write short stories. I'm working on my first movie script. But they wanted us to write something totally different. So I did a Fractured Fairy Tale, which was a children's book, just for fun. Had no idea that what I was doing for fun was going to turn into a book that actually turned into a business. I showed one of my classmates at the time, didn't know he was an illustrator or drawer, but I showed him the story, and he had cut up my story in pieces. And I'm like, what did you do with my story? But he had drew pictures and put all those pieces of paper, and I'm like, we just can't let this go to waste. So So that's how this book was born. The most rewarding thing for me now, though, is that I'm able to help other authors self-publish their own books. The strength of our business is editing, right? So we get the clarity, because I always tell authors, people can't call you and say, like, Ashley, what did you mean on page 25? Like, they can't do that. So it's important that it's very clear what's inside the book and what's on the pages. I always tell the authors, if I can understand it, then your reader can understand it. If I got questions, your readers are going to have questions. But we do everything with the book, whether it's editing, book covers, formatting, helping you distribute. We do everything in the process, and I also provide writing workshops, whether it's online or in person, for new authors who just would like to understand the publishing process. But also for seasoned authors, right, for yourselves, where if you have works that you're already working on, you network with other authors, you get them to read it, they read, but we also give feedback. Because what I've noticed is that a lot of writers write, and then when it's time to let other people read it or hear it, it's like they're very nervous about it. I'm like, you're writing it for other people. So these are the things that we provide. The motto or tagline for my business is, don't let that book die inside of you. I know so many people have so much talent, whether they're artists, writers, singers, good with kids, whatever your gift is. A lot of people have it, but they hide it inside themselves. So it's like, get it out of you, share it with somebody, or get with the people who can help you share it. So that, I had no idea. I've always been a writer, but I never knew that I could turn it into a career, and that's my thing. I like to encourage people that you can get paid off of doing things that you love. And once I realized that I was going to make this book public, right, available for the public, yes, it's good to entertain people, but it's also good to help people. So I included a foreign language portion in my book. So it's a reading book, a coloring book, but it's also introduces Spanish. When I was growing up, I didn't get access to foreign language until I was in high school. Other countries, they're teaching their kids kindergarten, first grade, third grade. So I'm like, we should be on top of our games, teaching our children, as well. So I incorporated this, as my way of giving back, to our country, right? To make sure it's there. So just want to encourage everybody to, if you're just thinking about being a writer and you haven't started, even if it's not writing, whatever your thing is, because everybody's thing is different. Some of us have more than one thing, right? But go ahead and do it. Like, don't let that gift die inside of you, because it's here. And just remember that you can help somebody, whether you're entertaining them, whether you're encouraging them, right? Whether if somebody reads your book and they're getting a good, healthy cry, you just never know how your words are going to impact the next person. But if you keep it in a notebook and you never let anybody read it, right? Or if you keep those songs to yourself, right? Or whatever your skill or talent is, then you're not really impacting anyone but yourself. That's great, but when you impact others, it can just do so much more, so much fulfilling. Like I said, I never knew that one book would turn into a business for me, so I'm excited. So I encourage everybody, hey, get started, get finished, get published. Even for my I know there's a lot of seasoned authors in here, and I tell everybody, when you have that one-hit wonder song, right? You hear this song, you love that song, and you're like, well, where's the next song? Like, I love Lauryn Hill. She's a great artist, but I'm like, where's the rest of the music, right? So it's the same thing for the authors. If you got one book, that's great, but how many times are they going to read that same book? You got to keep coming out with books. You got to keep coming out because you got fans, whether you know it or not, right? So just keep coming out with it. Congratulations to all the authors that have just keep coming. Like, I'm just so amazed and proud to be among you. So just keep it up. Thank you to Cindy and the CTC for this opportunity. Thank you for Ashley, Words United Bookstore, for having my book in her store, but also, being a partnership to, refer other authors to me that needs assistance in the self-publishing process. So thank you, everyone. Thank you all the guests that's listening. I'll be in the back if you want to ask questions or get a book and get it signed. But thank you so much.
Well, we actually have one author who is in a WebEx, and she is going to be at the table where Margaret Handrill, our librarian, is, and she asked that you guys go and visit with her, Shirley Westerhoff, Adolf. I'm not sure. I think it's both. But anyway, and before everybody leaves, I want to make sure that we all have one picture of all of our authors. So, you know, we're going to go visit with the authors now. I just want to thank all of you wonderful authors. I didn't think this was going to happen, and just because it just seemed like, you know, life was happening, and it has been so inspiring being around all of you, and I just want to thank you so much for coming and sharing your world with us. So those of you who are here, please visit with the authors, please talk to them, and we have another one on May 5th. Make sure you come back, and we're going to have some of the authors here, and our authors who spoke tonight, you're welcome to come back again. And we will continue, hopefully, to have this every year because there is so much talent locally that's just unbelievable. So thank you so much. Like I said, before we leave, we're going to get a group picture, but you guys go and talk to the authors. Thank you so much.
I like your book. I want to read that. Yeah, you have copies of that with you? Good. That sounds like an interesting spot. And I also understand your reticence.